Welcome back to the Age of Asparagus. Over the next 2 lessons, we're going to make some Bob Ross style mountains. Even if you've already watched his lesson, you should go back a second time and watch the part where he does this. That's between about 7:25 and 11:15 of the Mystic Mountain show we've been following. I'll put a link to that specific section in the video description, and if I can figure it out, I'll add an annotation or a card to this video. Once Bobby has filled you with his mountain painting wisdom, come back and join me here. Alright, time to make some mountains. So, this is pretty cool. I have to admit, when I first figured this out, how to replicate what Bob Ross does using Krita, I probably wasted an hour or so just drawing mountains, because you can whip them up in less than 2 minutes. No lie, you'll see. But first, we need to create a couple new brushes. We're going to be working with the brush engine again. This time I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. Slowly we'll be becoming more familiar with that brush engine window throughout the course. We're going to start this time with a preset called the smudge block tilt. Now, this section here is getting pretty small. And scrolling through this, I don't want to lose my nice big overview. I like access to my palette here. I have access to my brush presets on the pop-up, and the rest of the brushes I have access from the toolbar here, which is almost identical to the brush presets Docker, except you have a little bit more functionality. You can actually delete brushes. Be careful with that button there. So let's search here. It's called smudge block tilt. So I'm going to just type in block tilt. Let's see what happens. Block tilt. I get nothing. How about just block? There we go. Smudge block tilt. That's going to be our starting brush. So I'm going to select it. Let's go to the brush engines window. We're going to have a brief interlude here so that I can show you some updates to the brush engine window in the latest versions of Krita. This has changed quite a bit since the original series was recorded. I'm not going to re-record each of the sections going through the brush engine because most of the important stuff is the same. However, some of the components have moved around, and I want to show you how to navigate the new version of this brush engine window. So first off, in the old Krita, there is a list of brushes that appears along the top. They're still here. They're just over here in the preset section down on the left, and you can filter which engine is showing by clicking here. So if I want all of the color smudge engine brushes, I will see them here. It is also filtered by tag. So right now I have one color smudge brush in the Bob Ross tag. If I go to all, you'll see all of the color smudge brushes that I have installed. On the right, the scratch pad here doesn't zoom like it used to based on your canvas zoom out here. So everything will appear when you're doing this in Krita 4 quite a bit larger. And you can't change that. It appears to have a fixed zoom now. If you want to zoom out just to see what it looks like a little bit smaller, you can temporarily reduce the size of your brush to about half of what you want it to be, and that will kind of match the tutorial because we are zoomed out here, you know, just over half. Actually, it shows down here we're zoomed out 40% right now. And then before you save the brush, your new preset, make sure you have the proper size. It's not perfect, but it'll help give you an idea if you want to. If you're fine with having just a larger sample, then you can leave it as it is. As well, instead of there being a button here to create new presets, you're going to click the Save New Brush Preset button once you have all the settings how you want them for a new brush preset, and that's where you're going to set the name of the new brush. As well, you can choose whether you want to leave the existing thumbnail. You can load whatever I had on the scratch pad, which at this point was nothing. You can even load images as well from your computer, which is pretty nice. An existing thumbnail will be the thumbnail of the brush you started with or copied from. But I don't want to overwrite that. When you make a change to a brush in any of the settings, you'll notice an icon appear here which indicates to you that the brush has been changed from its saved state, and that will remain until you restart Krita. You'll also notice that you'll get a little icon here, a little edited icon indicating that this brush has been edited, and that will also appear in the icon there and anywhere that brush appears. You can reset the brush back to its save state by clicking this refresh icon. And outside of this window, you can click it right there as well on the toolbar. After you've saved a brush preset, if there's a typo in your name or you want to change it, you can change that here and save over the name of the preset. The hardest thing to do now is to update the icon after you've saved the preset. So if I saved a preset with this icon, it's not easy for me to change this icon anymore. So for example, if I wanted to show, since this is my cloud brush, and I wanted to actually show it have some clouds here, so my icon looks nicer, I could save it as a new brush preset. I'm going to load the scratchpad thumbnail, and I'm actually just going to save it with the same name. Now it's actually going to be a new brush that's going to overwrite the old one, and it's no longer in my Bob Ross palette. The old one is. I don't know if that's supposed to be there or not. So let's go find that brush, and now we can add it back to Bob Ross. Does it appear? There it is. The old one does too. I don't know why that's still there, because it doesn't exist. It might disappear when I restart Krita. So that's how you can change a thumbnail. I'd suggest just getting all the settings as good as you can, editing the thumbnail exactly how you want it, and then when you go to save a new brush preset, you have everything ready, load the scratchpad thumbnail, and then you'll have your custom thumbnail and you won't have to change it later. Changing anything else afterwards is easy. You can just, if I wanted this to be 105 pixels, you can just overwrite the brush and it will save the updated settings. Finally, in later tutorials, I'm going to show you how to detach this window, which you can't do anymore, but you don't really need to. To change the color, for example, if I wanted to add some color to my thumbnail, I can just click away, choose a new color, and go back, and all my changes are still there, unlike the old version of Krita where it would reset your brush to its saved state if you hadn't saved a new preset yet. So now we can add new colors if we want to. You could even, if you want to, change brushes. If you need different brushes to form part of your thumbnail for some reason, and then you could go back to the brush you were editing and then save it as your new brush and load the scratchpad thumbnail. Hopefully that has given you enough of an overview of the changes in Krita 4 that you can follow along with the rest of the tutorials, which do a lot of work in these brush engines. Thankfully, the main area right here and all these settings, hardly anything has changed and nothing's changed that will affect this series. So let's get back to that palette knife here. We'll look up block tilt. There we go. Select that and we can continue on. And we can see here we have the smudge block tilt selected with all of its settings. It's a color smudge brush is the type of engine it uses. And let's see what it looks like in our preview window. It does nothing. Well, that's because it's a smudge brush and it doesn't actually use any color. My foreground color is black, and yet it is not drawing in black. So the first thing we're going to need to change is we need to give this smudge brush some color. And how we do that in this color smudge engine is we go to this option down here, the color rate. Currently that is off. So if I just turn that on, we don't have to worry about these settings here yet. Then I start getting some color. Recall from our previous brushes that this little dotted area here is what's going to become the icon for our preset. So if I want to reload the icon that came with the smudge block tilt, I can click that there. This is a nice icon. It's a palette knife. Let's put a foreground background gradient here and take a look at some of these settings just briefly. Starting at the top, we have the brush tip. So here are a whole bunch of sections on the left, and each section has a ton of settings. I just noticed that when we were switching around brushes, the color rate reverted back to off, so let's turn that back on again. The brush tip is the shape of your brush when you click down. You can see here it's a rectangular shape, and it is not completely dense. It has some open areas, which is, you can't really see there, but if I draw like this, you can see some of these lines. It's not fully solid. You can change the shape to almost anything. It's a lot of fun playing around with these settings. We can change the size of the brush. That's pretty obvious. The ratio will change the width of the brush. So if I go all the way up to 1, now I've got a square. And if I go right down to 0, I have nothing. Or really thin if I want it. For our brush, we're going to use something like 0.06, so fairly thin, much thinner than the default right there, something like that. We're not going to worry about the fade setting here for our palette brush, but you can easily see the difference when I change the fade, the horizontal, is it has a smooth edge now. So it doesn't have as sharp an edge. You can completely see the difference there between them. But we're going to leave that for this brush. And this is basically the process of playing around with these settings. Many of them are very self-explanatory, some of them not so much. But just by playing with the settings, you can quickly find the effect you're looking for. One thing we might want to change, for example, is the angle. So the default angle of this brush is at 90 degrees, which is not occurring with my pen because my Intuos 5 Touch tablet has tilt and rotation sensitivity, so as I turn my pen, the brush is turning also, and that's this setting right here under rotation, which we'll get to in a moment. In fact, since most of you probably don't have a rotationally sensitive tablet, I'm going to turn that off. Even though this effect is much easier to achieve with rotation, I'm just going to turn that off for now. And we'll go back up to brush tip, so then you'll see what I see, hopefully. Okay, there we go. So now our brush is 90 degrees. If I change the angle, my brush will be fixed in a different position. If you don't have tilt sensitivity, then set your brush to about 135 degrees. And I'll show you a way to kind of fake it. Anyway, we'll get a good mountain effect out of it without that. Okay, so that's a good start. Our mountain's going to be, something like this anyway. We're getting there. These other settings, a lot of fun to play with. We don't need to worry about them for this. Shape, square, circle, turns it into a circle. And although this generated brush tip works for us, you can use textures as well. So for example, if I want to switch over to some, let's just try this very top one here in the top left. What's texture is that? There, my brush will turn into whatever texture I choose. Ooh, cool. Okay, let's go back to our brush. So the next thing I want to change in our brush is we don't actually get enough. Even if I press really hard, we're not getting enough color. So all I did here was turn on the color rate, but we didn't actually look at its settings. So let's select the color rate option here, and you can see the strength is down to 0.23, about 23%. So by increasing that, we should be able to get more color. Let's test it out. There it is now. Let's increase it to 50. Oh yeah, see, we're getting darker. So let's crank her up to something like, let's just go up to 100. I think that'll be good. So I think the brush is still a bit light. Even if I press hard, I can't quite get it dark enough on these downstrokes here. So let's check out the smudge length, and let's increase the strength of that. Let's go up to like 75 or something. There we go, that's nicer. Let's use that. Before we save these changes we made, let's go load up the icon, and I'm just going to draw with our new settings here so we have an idea. So the icon better represents this new brush that we have. So we have our BR palette knife ready to go. Let's add it to our brushes. Under the presets icon on the toolbar. Let's do a search here for BR again, and we should be able to pull up all of our brushes. BR palette knife, you can see there's two there, similar to what we just created. Okay, my BR palette knife, I'm going to right click it and assign it to the Bob Ross tag. My other one, I'm just going to delete that. And I made a snow one too. We're going to recreate that now. I'm going to delete that one. So on our pop-up now, we should have three. We got our palette knife. Unfortunately, the icon's a little cut off here, but I know what it is. And we'll soon enough be able to draw some mountains. So why don't we get started on that? Let's go to the layers, and we'll create a new layer for our mountains. I'm going to click this button here, the plus. I got a new layer. Double click the name, and we'll call it mountains. Hit enter to fix it. And I'm going to choose, make sure the color you have chosen is our mountain mixture, the almost black but kind of blue, purple, dark sienna, alizarin, crimson mix. And we're going to try and draw a mountain here. So I didn't mention this before, but our brush size is 100 pixels, which is about 1 inch, and Bobby's using a 1-inch palette knife, so that should work out fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by going up on a slant like this, and then coming down on a jaggy other side of the mountain. Let's take a look at this. So I'm going to come up. I'm putting a lot of pressure on this because I want a lot of color, and I'm going to come down something like that. And actually I want more color, so I'm going to come down again on top of it. And now I'm going to fill out some of this with color. The actual streaks here doesn't matter much because we're going to add that texture later with the snow. I just want to fill out some color. We're going to smudge this all in later. This is just the general outline shape. Okay, and now I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to go up a little bit, and then I'm going to come down. Little jaggy edges there. We'll fill this out with some color. I'm going to slowly send that way. Add some color here. Get over top of that blue. Get a nice dark area over that blue. Okay. Now we're going to go back to our smudge brush here, and we want this smaller to start up in these sharp areas, so I'm going to reduce the size to about, using the left square bracket, down to about 100. So this has been happening to me before, and when I switch the size of this brush, for some reason, it is not smudging properly. So if I switch back to this brush, let's try that again. Let's reduce the size to 100 and try it. There we go, now it's working properly. Don't know, that happened to me every time. So just switching out and switching back in seems to have no problem. So I'm just smoothing out some stuff up here. It doesn't matter too much. Now, one thing you want to avoid is actually smudging along the edge. We want to keep that nice sharp edge if you can, and some of that detail. If you have anything anywhere that's not solid color, that's fine. You might want to just brush it out a bit. I added a lot more color here than I normally did, a lot more black with this brush. That's fine. Let's go back to our full 2-inch one, and we're gonna just smooth, small light strokes here. You can really drag out that black if you press too hard and too long. So just smooth out the bottom there. Bobby's pretty excited about this wonderful pollution here that gives you the blurry bottom of the mountain. Most of this is going to be covered by other stuff in the scenery, so it's not too big of a deal. Just get that out there. Good, okay, so we got an outline of a mountain. Next up, we're going to add some snow, and this is where the mountain starts looking cool. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you back for the next show.